Hey everyone, we just got the closing bell for Tuesday, June 25th. We were looking for some clues from our major indices on whether we were going to bounce or if we are going to pull back. You can see here that the SPY looks like we at least held that MA8, EMA8. I'm not sure I would call that a bounce, but this is sideways movement. At least it's a green bar. It's not didn't really go anywhere. But what is kind of disappointing is even after the consumer confidence, our volume is still super, super low. We're at 31 million off of the 55 million moving average, which has come down like 30 million over the past month or two. So the volume still hasn't come back into the markets at this point. Maybe it'll happen at the end of the week with some of these economic reports like the GDP that are coming out and the personal income outlays. However, the following week is July 4th. It contains July 4th. I believe it's on a Thursday. Let's see, well, I'm pretty sure it's on Thursday. So if it lands in the middle of the week, it's a little bit awkward. And maybe we won't get the volume until after the holiday weekend. And if we don't get it then, then we can just expect a very low volume summer, basically. So we'll see. We'll see if we get anything back from it. So far, the S&P looks like it held. The QQQ also held its EMA8. That's a little bit better of a bounce than what we saw in the SPY, but we were, of course, looking for a confirmation bar. We were looking to close above the previous day high, which we didn't quite do. So one more day. Let's just see tomorrow if we can get a little bit higher. We'll look at the SMH. That was a nice little, again, I guess you could call it a bounce. It's really just sideways chopping movement, but we are sandwiched between that EMA 20 and EMA 8, so it makes it a little bit more challenging for us to just get that bounce or that confirmation bar in a single move. So we'll have to see if this continues tomorrow and is able to break through that EMA 8. And then if we look at NVIDIA made it all the way to its EMA 8. So again, perfectly sandwiched in between these two. So tomorrow is going to be critical. It's going to tell us whether or not we can bounce and break out. We had a little baby hedge on the QQQ. We'll keep that on, although obviously it went against us today, but that's the purpose of a hedge. So we just want to see, we'll just keep it on one more day. If we get that confirmation, then we'll take it off. Otherwise, it's okay. It's probably lost a little bit more money than I care to lose on a hedge, but we do need it for one more day right here. So everything is looking good so far. Let's take a look at our VIX. The VIX came down, and let's see what happened in bonds. Bonds just chopping sideways. So overall, I would call this encouraging, but sideways. Very clearly on the SPY, just sideways movement. The QQQ, it may have felt like a significant move, but it's just sideways movement. And also, again, low volume over here. And then same with the SMH and NVIDIA. The NVDA, yeah, so NVIDIA 362 million, the moving average has been 440. So all of them are in the same situation where we have lowered volume. Let's see what happened to the Dow Jones, because that was the one that was moving in the opposite direction. So looks like we just made it worse. It's just moved back down, and that's what we were expecting, at least a pause, because it had gone up so much for a week now, a little over a week. And this one definitely is we wouldn't call this a pullback. We did make a new low versus yesterday, and we did close below that low. So this is more of a directional movement than what we saw in the other indices. So we're starting to get that disparity again, or increase that disparity between the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones. Let's take a quick look at small caps. Small caps doing nothing, just chopping sideways. Let's look at the equal weighted. Equal weighted also moved. So this is clearly not in the same direction as the QQQ, or sorry, the SPY. This is a very large red bar, or at least a large red body. The bar itself is about the same size, but the body is very clearly down. We did close below the previous low and the low before that, and the low before that, and the low before that. So that is significant movement, although it is still within this choppy sideways range. That is a significant movement on the RSP, and we just did not see that on the SPY. We were higher on the SPY, this tiny baby body. So that tells me, once again, the weighted nature of the SPY, the FANG stocks, the tech stocks, they're really carrying this index still. That is not encouraging. There will probably be some analysts that will tell you it's okay. This is normal. This is good right now because AI is the wave of the future, and the future is all the AI will affect other sectors and bring them up. But that's so long term that it's not encouraging news for right now. We're evaluating markets as right now. And this type of disparity cannot sustain itself long term. It can happen short term. Medium term is very hard to argue as well, and it for sure will not continue for long term. There has to be a correction. There has to be a healthy foundation for the market to keep on moving higher. So for now, doesn't look like we're getting that. I don't want to draw any conclusions though, because this is really just sideways movement in the SPY and the QQQ. So until we get that green bar that closes above this high or this high, then we're just going to say that's choppy sideways movement. And it takes a lot of chop to equal the same thing as a bar move that moves higher. So tomorrow is going to be critical to watch the same things that we were watching for today. The difference between the Dow Jones and the QQQ, whether the QQQ bounces, whether the S&P bounces, and then the SMH, the NVIDIA, and the disparity between the tech sectors. So let's look at XLK. XLK did make it a little bit above its EMA 8, but once again did not make it above the yesterday's highs. So this does look like sloped movement. And if I draw a line chart, yes, it does look like slope movement, but we know that there's not significant movement or momentum or conviction if I just stay within the previous day's range. It's not, I can't call that a healthy movement if we just stay within yesterday's range. And you can see that this bar, even though it looks like it's higher, the low is above yesterday's low, the high is below yesterday's high. So this bar is completely contained within this one. It's not real movement until it breaks out of that range. So XLK looks good, but from a kind of objective perspective, it's really just sideways movement. And then if we look at XLC did really well. Okay, so this is a little bit more encouraging because now we're getting broader involvement in the other areas of tech. And then let's look at SMH. Yeah, same as XLK. So at least we got a little bit of involvement in the XLC, and that tech sector as a whole is balancing out a little bit. So we're certainly not getting it across sectors. I can look at that specifically in a moment, but I can just tell just by what we've seen so far in the indices and the RSP that we're not. And if I look at QQEW is much more clear that this is just sideways choppy movement. Okay. So let's take a look at, there's one more I think I was going to look at, SMH, XLK. Okay, so XLC, I can't think what I was saying. This is a healthy movement in XLC. It's almost no shadow right here and basically zero wick. The high is 85.99. We closed at 85.96. So this is a very solid upward movement. So that is encouraging. Let's take a look at those sectors and see what we did for today. SMH up the most, XLK up next, XLC up 0.93. Okay, so that's interesting that XLC, that the charts look the way that they do, because if we look at a pure percentage change basis, it looks like money went back in. So this once again is showing you the weighting of the holdings within these companies or within these ETFs. The SMH, Nvidia being number 2 or 3 largest stock in the world or market cap in the world, weighing heavily on SMH and XLK and QQQ, but it's not in the communication services. So we don't have that dragging up the same amount. So from the chart perspective, you can tell that XLC's movement upward was much more solid and much more bullish than these three actually. And so NVIDIA is really still carrying all of this weight. Let's take a look specifically at NVIDIA. Yeah, and NVIDIA went from its EMA 8 to EMA 20 to its EMA 8. And it did make a higher high. The high is above the previous high though. So this is solid movement. It just hit it a little bit of resistance. So we'll see if tomorrow it can break through that resistance. If we look on an intraday basis, you can see that the SPY bounced off of that moving average very clearly a couple of times, ended up a little bit higher, crossed above it, and ended up on a upward momentum. QQQ, same thing, did cross all the way to the second purple line right here, pulled back to the moving average, and then back up. So it looks like we ended the day on some pretty positive momentum, and it wasn't a last minute spike. It was something that would carry you through for a couple of hours. And that consumer sentiment report ended up giving us a little bit of a boost. We did move up immediately after that report, because we were at the moving average in the SPY right at 7 o'clock. So that report did help us push towards the bullish side for the rest of the day. Let's take a quick look at that, and then we'll probably be done looking at stuff. So the consumer sentiment report, we were saying that as long as we didn't come below or significantly below the consensus, then we would be fine in the markets. And our consensus was 100. We got 100.4. So we did tiny bit better than the consensus. And so that's why. So the consensus it is down from previous 102 down to 100. I don't like their revisions, so I don't look at that. I consider that noise. So the 102 down to 100.4, 102 down to 100.4. So there is less consumer confidence, but it didn't weaken as much as, or it basically weakened in line with what we were expecting. And so there's no surprises. And so that was, so you can see that we didn't go raging upwards after the report, and we didn't break down after the report. We just got a little bit of support, but at least it pushed us towards positive momentum for the rest of the day. Okay, overall, it's looking like we do have some positive momentum in the markets. It does look like that is very possible that NVIDIA could pop above that EMA 8. And if that happens, then it'll carry QQQ, SMH, and all the rest of them, SPY, it'll carry them upwards. I don't know if we'll be able to break the yesterday's high in the SPY because we're such low volume, but QQQ seems very possible, right? We closed very close to the previous day high. And that's true of XLK and XLC's close on its high, but SMH and XLK as well. So as long as those two move upwards, then what we'll want to see is, we'll very likely challenge the all-time high, but will we be able to break the all-time high? So if we pop up above this high right here, then we'll take that hedge off, and then we'll see if we can break that all-time high. So that's what we have to look forward to for the rest of the week, is do we challenge and break above the all-time high? And then we have a couple of catalysts right here, GDP and personal income outlays, or the PCE. So we're not out of the woods yet. We could maybe do okay tomorrow, and then if GDP doesn't come in very well, or the PCE where it shows that people are having to spend more money for the same basket of goods, then that will probably take the steam out of this market. Okay, so we'll just wait and see how the rest of the market or rest of the week plays out. But for tomorrow, we're going to expect, at least for now, tomorrow morning may be slightly different, but for now, we're going to expect some upward momentum. Nothing crazy, but we might be able to challenge or come close to challenging all-time highs again tomorrow in the QQQ. SPY less likely, but somewhat possible. Looking more towards the bullish side on the day for tomorrow, but for the rest of the week, we'll have to see how those two reports come out. Okay, so that's going to be it for today. We got a pretty good, clear picture of what happened and what to expect for tomorrow and for the next couple of days. So have a wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, and I will see you tomorrow morning.